As of this video's release, Bob's Burgers is on the verge of airing its 300th episode, and I figured now was as good a time as any to look at the show and its writers and ask, what's next for you?
Now, I have the microphone, so, what's next for you?
No, what's next for you, Jocelyn, in your journey to give me the microphone?
I think it's...
In this video, I'd like to explore what would happen if they chose to let the characters age by way of a time jump. This is an idea I'm personally really excited by, and I think it could usher in a lot of exciting new possibilities for the show. At the same time, I'm also aware that this could be a really stupid idea that ruins the show, and we're gonna get into all that too. So let's throw all these ideas into a pot and see what happens.
Oh, man. Oh, boy. All right, I probably wrecked it.
Perhaps the single biggest reason why I think it would make sense for Bob's Burgers to do a time jump is that they're kind of headed in that direction already anyway, especially in how they've been writing the Belcher kids. Now, don't get me wrong, the show's been doing episodes about these kids getting older from the beginning. The 6th episode of the show ever revolves around Tina's 13th birthday, Jean has a preteen life crisis in season 12, and in one of my favorite endings the show has ever done, Louise learns how to ride a bike in season 8. But ever since the Bob's Burgers movie came out in the summer of 2022, the show has gotten demonstrably more interested in telling these kinds of stories far more often. Just look at season 13, the first one to air after the movie. It's anchored by 3 episodes that are dedicated specifically to the idea of Louise growing up. The first of these, What About Job, has Louise genuinely confronting what her future might look like for what appears to be the very first time.
What if I grow up and I just am not really anything cool or exciting? What if I'm just a boring life person?
Unfortunately, this episode mostly feels like a missed opportunity to me. The primary conflict seems to only exist as an excuse for the show to do its yearly anthology episode, this time conjuring up wacky careers for Louise, and it doesn't help that it ends on a pretty ambiguous note too.
Geesh, go to bed. I gotta finish my homework.
So, you're good?
I'm good. I feel better about stuff. Thanks, guys.
Aw, you're welcome.
But part of the reason why I think it was so ambiguous is that it was actually kicking off an almost covert season-long arc for Louise, because jump ahead to the midpoint of the season, and we arrive at the Plight Before Christmas, which presents her with a new but related dilemma. See, every year Louise submits a poem to the holiday poetry contest with the word poop in it, hoping it'll win so she can read it out loud at the public library. And this year...
Somehow I got in. I just need a ride. You don't have to stay. In fact, I don't want you there. If you tried to stay, I'd say, go on, get, and I'd spray you with a hose.
But as it turns out, the reason why her poem got picked and the reason why she doesn't want her family there is because she actually wrote something heartfelt and meaningful, and she's afraid to be that vulnerable in front of them. Or anyone. It's Louise. So of course she brings along her original poop poem as a backup, and as the episode nears its climax, even considers reading that one instead. And I'm not going to spoil how this one resolves. It's one of the best episodes of the whole show in my opinion, and I think its ending deserves to be viewed with fresh eyes. But let's just say it does end on a note of considerable growth for Louise, which is finally and fully realized in the season 13 finale, Amelia.
Oh, avoid. More of a manufactured publicity stunt than a hero.
Wayne, I have a lot of feedback for you right now.
After her classmate Wayne reveals himself to be a sexist little shit stain, Louise becomes determined to get a better grade than him on their multimedia reports over their chosen historical heroes. Hers being aviation pioneer and feminist icon Amelia Earhart, and his being astronaut and first man on the moon Neil Armstrong. Throughout the episode, Louise struggles with her confidence, especially after learning of Earhart's disappearance over the Pacific while trying to circumnavigate the world. After all, if Earhart was a failure, how could Louise possibly expect to get a better grade than Wayne on a report about her? But through a combination of support from her mother, siblings, and friends, she uses her creativity and interest in puppetry, a theme that shows up earlier in season 9 and comes up yet again in season 15, to deliver a report so incredible it literally leaves Wayne speechless.
Okay, who's up next? Is it Wayne?
Yeah, it's Wayne.
And I just don't know how you can walk away from these episodes not feeling like Louise has grown up, even if she hasn't necessarily gotten older, and this applies just as much to her brother and sister. Back in season 5, this is how the Belchers' favorite son, Gene, approached his passion for music.
So you want to become a skilled musician?
Yes.
Well, good news. All it takes is practice.
No.
Discipline.
No.
And hard work.
No.
Okay, hearing a lot of no's.
But flash forward to season 14 and just look at him.
I chased after a dream. It all seemed so simple. But get close to a star, and you can't see it twinkle.
And the changes are especially noticeable when we get to eldest Belcher child, Tina. While Jean and Louise have definitely had some big episodes in recent years, the character development around Tina has been practically non-stop. For instance, the season 12 finale, the one that aired right before the movie came out, is a two-part epic that manages to somehow be a riff on both Grease and Blade Runner simultaneously, and ultimately serves as an exploration of Tina's growing self-confidence. Self-confidence that's reaffirmed 3 seasons later when someone steals Tina's journal of historical fiction and holds it for ransom.
If you ever want to see your precious book again, it'll cost you $50, cash. You'll receive a call at 10 a.m. tomorrow with further instructions. And tell no one. No parents, no cops. Got it? You're allowed to answer, it's fine.
The kids eventually learn the culprit is an older girl named Reagan who gave up her own Rosie the Riveter comics in order to fit in better once she got to high school. Reagan projects this self-hatred onto Tina and therefore believes she's doing her a favor when she throws the journal into her family's pizza oven. But fortunately, Louise is able to get it back relatively unscathed. The most miraculous moment in this actually kinda harrowing episode comes right at the end, when Reagan tries to give Tina one last warning.
But hey, Tina, come high school, they're gonna eat you alive.
Hay is for horses, Reagan, and that's just fine with me, because I'm a horse to be reckoned with.
Tina is literally confronted with the idea of conformity in high school and says, bring it on. And it gets Reagan to reflect on her own behavior without being redeemed. It's a pretty incredible ending. And since we're talking about letting these characters age, I find it interesting that this exchange between Bob and Linda just so happens to appear in the exact same episode.
Where are our kids?
Did they grow up? Are they in college? No, we can't afford that, right?
Especially since the very next episode after this sees the Belchers going to a high school for what I am pretty sure is the very first time in the series' history. It's also another big episode for Tina, who ends up making peace with a part of herself that wants to keep her from confronting new and scary situations like the free throw contest featured in the episode.
But what if we go out in front of everyone and miss every shot? Yeah, we might go out there and do terrible and lose, or we'll do great and we'll win, or something in between, I guess. But I think what really matters is we just go out there and have fun doing something we're good at, damn it.
It's clear the writers are interested in telling new stories with these characters, and episodes like this almost feel as if the show is testing the waters for something bigger. Because I really can't help but wonder how much more runway they have with the current status quo. I mean, how many more stories can you really do about Tina looking ahead to high school until it makes sense to just put her there? And with Tina in high school and Jean and Louise stuck back at Wagstaff, how would a shakeup like that affect them? And what would Jean be like at 13? Would he still be into musicals and show tunes, or would he have started listening to more stuff like General Insanity as he got older? And what about Louise at 11? Would she be even more devious, or would she have started using her troublemaking abilities for good, like a kind of middle school Robin Hood? These are fun questions to ask, and I think it'd be cool for the Bob's Burgers writers' room to take a swing at trying to answer some of them. It would shake up the familiar rhythms of the show, it'd provide opportunities to tell new kinds of stories, and it would send a clear message that the show is still willing to make bold and creative choices this far into its run. So why wouldn't they want to do a time jump? Well, for all the same reasons I just listed. The foundation of any good sitcom is based in its sense of familiarity. If you tune into The Office, you want to see these specific people in this specific place do their specific brand of wacky shit, and you really specifically want to see this guy do wacky shit. And like, I'm not saying you can't do the show without him, I'm just saying if you do, maybe don't stunt cast James Spader doing his best impression of a homicidal sociopath.
I will not be blackmailed by some ineffectual, privileged, effete, soft penis debutante. You want to start a street fight with me, bring it on, but you're going to be surprised by how ugly it gets. You don't even know my real name. I'm the Lizard King.
I'm not saying that's not amazing. I'm just saying that phone call has a very different energy from this one.
Just say again really loudly what happened.
Okay, I burned my foot very badly on my Foreman grill, and I now need someone to come and bring me into work.
You burned your foot on a Foreman grill.
As The Office goes to show, a big change to a well-established formula can do a lot of harm if you can't manage the tightrope walk that comes with it. So the idea of shaking up the familiar rhythms of Bob's Burgers with something like a time jump could be exciting in the short term, but it could just as easily become a death blow if they're not careful. As for being able to tell new kinds of stories, They're already doing that. The Amazing Rudy is the obvious example here, as it's the first and to date only episode to fully place us in the perspective of a character that isn't one of the Belchers, but even more interestingly, it essentially confirms that the only reason we think of Bob's Burgers as a comedy is because we're looking at the world through their eyes. The moment you shift that perspective to someone else, like regular-sized Rudy, it suddenly looks an awful lot more like a tragedy. But the Amazing Rudy is just scratching the surface when it comes to the Bob's Burgers renaissance we're currently undergoing. You've got Bully Even or Not, which gave newfound depth to Zeke. You've got Fraud of the Dead, an episode that takes place almost entirely within a found footage mockumentary of Louise's creation. You've got The Right Tough Stuff, which is a love letter to both Linda and her sister Gail, and is hands down one of my favorite episodes from these newer seasons. Saving Favorite Drive-In gives us our first real look at Bob's childhood. Hope and Mike Night is a roller coaster of comedy and emotion and catharsis all at once, and the Dead Boat Society takes the kids on a dry land run of the Poseidon adventure. The show is already finding new stories to tell, and it already seems comfortable with reinventing itself. It doesn't need to prove anything to anyone by resorting to a time jump gimmick. But I mean, it'd still be pretty cool if they at least gave it a try, right? Because the precedent for this kind of thing was set more than 20 years ago, thanks to a show with such courage and fortitude that it dared to go where no one else has gone before or since, and yes, I am talking about Rugrats All Growed Up. The episode opens on the gang watching a campy sci-fi movie about time travel. Then, a few minutes later, while in the midst of a fight with Angelica, they pretend a boombox in a coat closet is actually a time machine that will take them to the future where she can't push them around anymore, and that's our excuse to do the time jump. This is honestly a pretty brilliant way to execute an experiment like this, because if it proves to be a hit like it did, great, spin it off, run it till people lose interest, what a success. But if it had proven to be a failure and people didn't like the change, they'd have the escape hatch of, oh, it was just their imagination, and then no one ever has to think about it ever again. So, if the Bob's Burgers writers are interested in a time jump, I think this is the model to follow. And they actually have a way to pull it off that's already built into the DNA of the show and that I actually mentioned right at the beginning of this video. The anthology episode. Once per season, the show does an episode where the family, usually the kids, tell each other stories, with each story reflecting the personality and perspective of the character telling it. So an obvious pitch here is that maybe Wagstaff holds a school-wide essay contest on the topic of where I'll be in 2 years, and each of the Belcher kids comes up with their own idea of what that future will look like, and boom, there's your episode. And if they really wanted to take a swing, they could have the episode end and fade to black, only to then have a title card come up like 2 years later, and we get just a quick scene, no more than a minute, of what things actually look like in the future. Kinda like how Bluey ended season 3. That would be the most interesting version of the episode to me, and if people like it, do something with it, spin it off, whatever. And if people hate it, I'm sure everything will be okay.
Let's see your everything is okay face. No. No, just stop doing a face.
This?
And stay with me here by the grill. That way your sweat will look more natural.